Andy Van Slyke.
And in the right center, Van Slyke on his horse. And he caught it. What a great play by Andy Van Slyke for the second out. He can play center field like few others.
And had he missed that ball, that might be an inside-the-park home run for Ron Gant because nobody was behind Van Slyke. 2 consecutive innings and 2 terrific plays by Van Slyke. You see Bonilla sliding behind Andy, and had he dropped that ball and that ball's behind him, Ron Gant runs all night. There it is right there.
Look like they're breakdancing out there. Boy, he can play center field.
Andy Van Slyke played center field like few others. The only problem, he didn't do it long enough in a Cardinal uniform. Only 4 of his 13 Major League seasons was with the Cardinals. Most of the rest of his career was in Pittsburgh, where he is a legend, even as his own bobblehead. Andy was not a home run hitter, but did touch them all 164 times. What many may not remember is that Andy could run. He finished with 245 stolen bases and an amazing 91 triples. But Andy Van Slyke will long be remembered for his incredible outfield play. He had a strong and accurate throwing arm, and with the Pirates won 5 consecutive Gold Gloves. Andy was traded to the Pirates on April 1st, 1987. He and many Cardinal fans thought it was an April Fool's joke. No joke. The Cardinals got catcher Tony Pena in return. Hardly one of the best Cardinal deals ever. Andy played 1,700 games in the big leagues with over 800 runs batted in, and we're so happy that he continues to make St. Louis home, and we're honored to welcome him in to the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame, Andy Van Slyke.
Andy Van Slyke, at the time he was drafted in 1979, the 6th overall pick in the draft, at that time the highest first-round pick the Cardinals had ever had, and I know that almost everybody, when they get drafted by their initial organization, you're that for life, and you became a Cardinal for life on that day, didn't you?
You really do. You're born into a family, and you don't realize how much of a business it is until something happens to you. The team doesn't give you the contract you want, or you get traded and you realize it's a business. But my greatest part of my career obviously was in Pittsburgh, but my heart never left St. Louis.
Drafted in '79, came to the Cardinals on June 15th of 1983, the corresponding move to the Keith Hernandez trade to the New York Mets. You come up, they immediately put you in the lineup. Did you feel pressure? You knew who Keith Hernandez was. You knew he'd won an MVP here. What was the feeling?
Well, it had a lot of things going on. I got married 2 weeks before. My wife is here tonight, Lori.
Hi, Lori.
Keith Hernandez getting traded really didn't have that much to do with it. I was ready to play in the big leagues. There was no reason for me to stay in the minor leagues. I was ready, the very first connection I had with the media, it was actually not you, but you were my first interview when I got to St. Louis, by the way. And I'm in high school, and I get a phone call in my dad's office, who happened to be the principal of the high school I went to. That's the only reason I graduated. That the first question is, Lou Brock's retiring this year. Are you going to fill Lou Brock's shoes? 18 years old. Oh yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. Don't tell Lou to relax.
It's my understanding that one of the things that made you so good in high school and throughout your minor league career and earlier in your major league career was that you were so competitive that you really got mad, right?
Sure. Yeah, I was very competitive. I'm really surprised that the Cardinals drafted me, because I was boxing the night before in a boxing club we had in high school. And I went to work out, and I couldn't hit the ball out of the infield because I had welts all over my arms, and I had 6 boxing matches. And the scout for the Cardinals asked me what the problem was. I've seen you play. How come you can't hit? And so I told him about the boxing matches. And he asked me, did you win? I said, yeah, I won all 6. And he said, okay. And he walked away. And I saw his name was Fred McAllister, and I saw him in St. Louis when I came to sign my first professional contract. And he said, "When you told me that boxing match, I knew you were the right guy for the Cardinals."
And Andy played really hard, as you saw during his major league career, but you played so hard that you kind of got beat up at the minor league level too. You had some injuries before you got to St. Louis.
Broke my elbow a couple of times. Yes, had a lot of injuries. Broke my collarbone here in St. Louis as a player hitting the wall. So yeah, I mean, the problem is they built all those stadiums for the AstroTurf. I don't know how these guys were even sitting at a table. All these old football players who played football on it, but yeah, it takes its toll.
1985, your second full year in the majors. Bruce Sutter leaves. Whitey says, "I just got 45 games dumber." Cardinals bring up Vince Coleman. Talk about that season and how magical it was.
It was very magical. If you remember, we started out, I think 1-6. That's the first week of the season, and Whitey thought he had a great team, and John Tudor started off. He didn't win his first 8 starts or something like that, and everything was going wrong. And then when Vince Coleman was the reason why things turned around. He really ignited that team, and we ended up stealing over 230 bases that season, and that will never be broken again, I don't think, in Major League Baseball history.
I agree.
A team steals 230 bases. I mean, I don't think the Cardinals have stole 230 bases since the 90s. So it's just a different game, and it was just a magical year. We got to remember, the one terrific thing about Whitey Ball was we might have lost, but we never went in a slump. I mean, speed never goes in a slump unless you pull a hamstring.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we were so good.
And one of the cool things about that team, I remember vividly walking into the clubhouse one day and running into you, and you said, "It's a different hero every day." It really was. And everybody was playing at an all-star level, too.
Well, it's because we were very talented from all the way through the roster. Absolutely.
Ron talked in the video about the trade on April 1st of 1987. When they brought you in to tell you, did you think it was an April Fool's joke?
Sure. I was.
Who brought you in?
Well, I wasn't brought in. I was told to go, and I was in spring training, hitting third every day. And spring training was having a terrific spring training. And you got to remember, they post that lineup before you go out and take your batting practice, and it said Coleman, Smith, and for 3 weeks it said Van Slyke. Well, it was blank. Why is my name up there? So I went out to go stretch, and Buddy Bates, the clubhouse manager, comes up to me and says, "Whitey wants to see you in his office." And I went, "Oh boy." He said, "What's he want?" He said, "Just go, Slick." So I went in there, and Whitey says, "Slick, I want you to know something. I traded you to Pittsburgh." Like, he had a big smile on his face. I said, "Yeah, okay, Whitey, April Fools, I get it. I'll leave, go out and get ready." He goes, "No, I really did." He said, "It'll work out great for you." And I obviously did.
You had, in your time in St. Louis, 84, 85, 86, 1,139 plate appearances against right-handers, 236 against left-handed pitchers. Yet the label was, on that day, Andy Van Slyke can't hit left-handed pitching. You didn't get much chance, did you?
Well, it's kind of hard to hit left-handed pitching when you sit on the bench and the plate's 60 feet, 90 feet away from you. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing I never said. When I went to Pittsburgh and I got the opportunity to play every day, if you hit 300 and you're a switch hitter, no one cares if you hit 220 from one side and 340 from the next side. But if you're a left-handed hitter and you only hit 240 against lefty and 330 against righties, everybody makes a big deal about it. Never could understand that one. Mm-hmm. But if you're hitting 300 or 320, who cares what you hit against left-handers?
Right.
You're doing your job.
Yeah. And Andy did his job defensively every day. 6 Gold Gloves, 3 All-Star appearances. And you were asked this question a lot during your career and after your career. If you had the choice of hitting a game-winning homer or throwing out a guy at the plate to win the game, it would be?
Throwing out somebody at home plate.
Why?
Because very few guys can do it. A lot of guys can hit home runs.
And go ahead.
Go ahead. It's all right. Yeah.
You were involved in one of the most famous games in baseball history, Game 7, 1992, National League Championship Series. The Pirates have a 2-0 lead over Atlanta going into the bottom of the 9th of Game 7. You can take it from there.
Well, we were up 2-0, and we had our best pitcher on the mound, Doug Drabeck. He was a Cy Young Award winner, and they get a guy on, and our second baseman who only had 6 errors the whole year, he makes an error, and I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of reminding me of what happened in '85. I'm going through this in my head, and I still thought we were going to get the whole thing done. And then they scored a run. Sid Bream's at second base. He's the winning run, and I asked Barry Bonds to move up because I think there's a chance that if we're going to lose, I want the ball to be hit in front of you. If it's on the ground, you got a chance to throw somebody out. And consequently, the slowest man in baseball scored on a base hit.
Yeah.
And that famous Sid Bream was the most devastating moment for me on a baseball career.
And if Barry would have moved up,
he probably still would have been safe. So it really didn't work out because the ball wasn't hit directly at him.
you were great for us when you were playing because you were so quotable, so many one-liners. Do you have a favorite of all time?
Probably, yeah, because, as a baseball player, especially if you're playing every day, you get so many of the rhetorical questions over and over and over. And you get the rhetorical, answers. I'm just here to help my team, and baseball been very, very good to me. You hear those things over and over again. So finally, a reporter asked me, if you could be somebody for one day, who would you like to be? I said, well, that's easy. I said my wife, because I want to know how wonderful it is to live with me.
We heard from Terry Metcalf about his son Eric. We heard from Big Walt about his kids who've both been drafted into the NHL. One son still in college, 3 that have played at a high level of safety at Michigan, a couple of professional baseball players. I watched you when I was doing games for Charter, bringing the camera out to all of those games. What's more nerve-wracking, watching your kids play or being out there in the postseason yourself?
Oh, that's easy, watching your kids. I mean, man, when your kids look bad, you're thinking, I was never that bad. And my wife was like, yeah, you were. So, yeah, it's because you just, like every parent, and it really doesn't really matter if it's sports or if they're in a relationship with somebody, if they're at school, you just want what's best for your kids. And when you don't have control of that, it's very, very nerve-wracking. At least when I stunk, I stunk. It wasn't, I did it. And you just don't like to see your kids fail.
And the cool thing is your kid's not only great at sports, but the kids that aren't playing sports anymore are doing well out in the real world.
Yeah, they're all doing very, very well. And, people don't realize that, baseball of all the sports is the hardest traveling. You're gone 8 months out of the year, basically. You're not even a full-time father the whole year. You're really not a full-time husband or father, trust me, until you're done playing. And my wife will vouch for that. I think any athlete will say that. But the only reason, for the grace of God and by my wife, is the reason why my 4 kids are doing as well as they are.
One last thing from Andy Van Slyke. You are going into the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame. You were the most popular player with the Pirates. You could have gone to Pittsburgh. You could have gone back home to upstate New York. Why St. Louis?
When I got here, it just felt like home. I mean, I can't explain it. It's just there's especially as a young professional baseball player, and the way that this community embraces their athletes, I think, is a reason why. I've been to Pittsburgh. I've talked to athletes in every different city, Atlanta, Pittsburgh. There's something about when an athlete comes to St. Louis, it didn't matter if it was hockey, football, or baseball. This city embraces their athletes at a different and a more personal level than I think any place in the United States.
Congratulations on going into the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame. Andy Van Slyke, the newest member of the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame.